Hey everybody, welcome back to the Personal Transformation Podcast. My name is Dan Story. And one of the topics that I've been kind of diving into a lot, which I think is prevalent across society at the moment, is this idea of stress. Everybody seems to be getting more stressed. More and more people are experiencing burnout. And there's a couple of ways through it. We can make ourselves more resilient, we can toughen up, or we can find ways to reduce stress. But stress is going to come, and we're always going to face challenges. Adversity is going to come our way. And so I'm trying to bring you, the listener, more different ways of understanding what stress is, how it affects our lives, and ultimately creating a routine, a lifestyle, a mindset that allows us to better deal with the stresses and the anxieties and the suffering that life brings to us on a daily basis. And so with that in mind, I've invited counselor, author, all-round stress management guru, Dean Graves, to the show. So Dean, thanks for joining us.
Dan, thank you for having me. I'm delighted to be here.
I'm trying to get lots of different perspectives on this, and I've been going through your, I'd say library. I don't know what it is, a library when you write your own books. We should come up with a word for that, or I should research it. But you have quite a spiritual, meditative approach to stress. I think I like the cognitive side. I had somebody that I was speaking to the other day that was very much in the physiological side. So I'm interested to see where your approach and kind of the spiritual, meditative approach to stress management and to anxiety and suffering is going to take us. So let's dive straight into it. Do you have a particular definition of stress, or can you tell us where you think stress arises from?
Stress, very simply, is defined as the difference between our expectations, how we think things should be, and how things really are. In other words, if we were able to experience things as they really were, we would no longer experience stress. The objective of experiencing bliss is just the absence of stress. So the less stress that we create for ourselves, it's all created by us, the happier that we get.
So stress is literally just the difference between our expectations and how we perceive the world to be. Is that what you're saying?
Well, we perceive the world through the lens of our expectations. We are obligated with every thought to make a decision about that thought. And the decision is whether this thought feels good and I like it, consequently, or it doesn't feel good and I don't like it. That is a complete emotion. That's all there is to an emotion. All of the thousands of names that we've come up for emotions are not emotions. Those are conditions of being that we are in at the time that we process the thought. And so based upon our experiences and our interpretation of those experiences, we create expectations. We expect some things to be good. We expect some things to be bad. But that notwithstanding, those are our expectations. The experiences themselves are absolutely neutral of any emotion whatsoever. We want to be successful in getting more of what we like. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I'm going to go out and get more of what I don't like. It is inherent to our beingness that we anticipate getting more of what we like, and we're going to do whatever we can in order to get more of what we like, even though that varies from person to person. From the time that we are infants and we begin to start processing thoughts, we begin to create a false identity. We begin to create a hierophant, which is the same thing as a false identity. This can also be called our ego. All three words define the same thing. And we create this hierophant for the sole purpose of getting more of what we like. In other words, even as infants, we have an experience and we decide that we like that experience. We want to get more of it. So we behave, we believe, even as an infant, that if we behave or respond or act in some way, that will get us more of what we like. As we mature, then that identity becomes more complex. And certainly we've had a lot more experiences, and so we've expanded the complexity of our identity, but we're constantly modifying this identity. Every time that we have an experience, we are measuring that whether we need to keep the belief that is motivating our identity or we need to surrender it, and even for a temporary basis. In other words, I'm observing you and the world around me to see how the world is responding to how I have created this hierophant. When I don't get more of what I like, then it is probable that I'm going to modify this identity in order to be more successful in my next experience to get more of what I like. Um, this continues through childhood. This continues through our teenage years. And one of the reasons that teenage years are usually so difficult for everyone is we have gained a significant escalation in our awareness, but we have no information. And so the chaotic behavior of teenagers is doing nothing more than a trial and error basis to get more information to fill the void to round out their awareness. And their dissatisfaction with the world and parents and siblings and everything is a direct result of that. You're not giving me more of what I like, and my identity is being challenged. And so I have to modify my identity, and that is the maturation process of learning to more effectively modify that identity that I have created so I will be more successful in getting more of what I like. We create peer supports, and that's PIER, not PEER, that serve as the foundation to hold our identity in place. When we begin to go to school and we've expanded the range of sources for our experiences, then we make friends. We choose friends not because we have a rational, logical checklist that they would be a good friend because of this, that, or the other. We simply feel more comfortable in their presence, and they feel more comfortable in our presence. And that's because we reciprocate in our recognition of each other's identity that we've formed. Those friends fade as our identity changes, and we make friends as adults the same way. We don't go through a rational, logical process. It's just very simply, I feel more comfortable. And so I experience less stress because you don't challenge my identity as other people do. That's how we choose our friends. We choose the family members that we choose to associate with. We all may have lots of family members, but we don't hang out with all of them. We just hang out with a few. And again, we have that same type of relationship with them. We feel comfortable with them. They feel comfortable with us. We join groups the same way. We join the groups that recognize our identity, and we recognize the group identity. And so we feel more comfortable participating in that group. We choose our spouse the same way. Our spouse, we feel comfortable because they recognize our identity. We recognize their identity. And that is the foundation as people continue to live with each other over an extended period of time, then we become each other's primary teacher. Our spouse is our primary teacher, and we are their primary teacher. What we're teaching each other is what elements that we've incorporated in our identity need to be reinforced or surrendered. And so when a spousal relationship deteriorates and divorce, it ends up in divorce, it's as a direct result of one of two things. Either one person has surrendered these beliefs that they've incorporated in their identity more completely than the other, and the other feels resistance. In other words, they no longer have that feeling of comfort and reciprocity of identity recognition, or one has totally retreated into their identity and no longer allowing themselves to be their authentic self. What we perceive to be love in a spousal relationship or any relationship is very simply, we feel comfortable enough with that person, place, or in that situation that we are willing to temporarily surrender this identity that we created. The identity is who we think we are. That is our persona. We believe that we are this identity. But when we feel love, when we perceive that we feel love, what we're actually feeling is our authentic self. So in other words, we're surrendering this temporarily, this identity temporarily, and we are allowing our authentic self to emerge. And it feels good because we are feeling our authentic self without this false identity as our screen or our mask. And so we feel a love relationship with another. Stress is any time that our identity is challenged. If and I interpret that as something that I don't like. So if you challenge my identity in any form or fashion, then I'm resistant to that, and I interpret that as something that I don't like because you're not agreeing that this is this super wonderful person that I think that I am, and spend a lot of time creating this identity. Your identity is challenged, and so I don't like that. I don't feel comfortable in that situation. Anxiety is an underlying condition that we are not that false identity. We fear that but it's who we think we are. And so we're going to continue to promote that. And we continue to modify that with every thought that we process, every experience that we have, until we get to a point in our life, and this is a pervasive condition because of the low level of consciousness advancement that we have made, where we enter into a condition of stasis. In other words, we're no longer willing to modify our identity in order to advance along the consciousness scale. I'm going to stay the way I am, and I'm going to try to manipulate the world to conform to how I perceive myself, which magnifies our stress and causes us to retreat. And you see this in people that are aging. They reach that stasis level, and they essentially retreat from the world because it reduces the stimulus that challenges the stasis condition of their identity that they've entered into. What we all seek is the condition of stability. Stability differs from stasis in that stability anticipates change. Stasis does not anticipate change. And so stasis is a stress enhancing condition that we retreat to, and magnifies our our anxiety, because it's challenged more frequently, more often. So the design is that we will experience what we don't like until such time, because of this false identity, we'll experience more and more of what we don't like. In other words, more and more stress, until we reach a point of awakening. And awakening is an often misunderstood concept. It is nothing more than that point in your life when you come to the self-realization that all this stuff that I've been doing in my whole life is not making me happier. I'm not getting any happier. And so the plan is that once you reach that point, that you will assume responsibility for your self-healing and begin to search around for alternatives to the methodologies that you've been using in order to try to trick the world into giving you more of what you like. And as you do that, then hopefully you encounter some teachers, or you become aware of those that are around you that you perceive to be happier than you are. And so the human nature is that we begin to emulate those people that we deem to be happier than we are. And we begin to mimic what they have done in order to achieve their happiness. And I don't mean make more money. I mean truly happiness. And this is what the basis of marketing engineered consent is predicated upon. We observe someone driving a new car and they look really happy, and we have the thought, well, gee, if I had that new car, I'd be as happy as they are, which works for about 6 months until you buy this new car and you paid a few car payments. You think, yeah, I'm not really happy. I'm not happy as I thought I would be. So we search around and learn to use the same awareness that we've had pointed outside of us to measure the world's reactions to our false identity. And we have to learn to invert that awareness to point it inside. And we begin to become aware of what it is inside of us that is preventing us from allowing our authentic self to emerge more completely. As we do that, we are undergoing the healing process. And that healing is what allows our authentic self to emerge, which is already completely what we seek. We are what we seek, but we are unaware of that. And that transition point of awakening is the transition from unconsciousness to consciousness.
Okay, so glad I had my coffee before this one. We went deep. I was like, hey, Dean, welcome to the show. Let's just jump straight into the deep end. So I think I kept up just about. And listeners, you can always listen back, right? I'll slow it down and kind of go back over these key topics. So let me try and summarize. We're born. We want to exert ourselves on the world. We have some experiences. Some of them we like, some of them we don't like. And we start to form this identity, with this ego of the things that we want, but we're basing them on childish, basic desires of hedonism and excitement and passion and chocolate and ice cream and all things that make us feel good, right? And then as we get a bit older, we start to maybe mature, maybe a little bit, and try and find the things that fit or agree with our identity and the way we see the world. And anything that doesn't agree with us creates a discord, a gap between, which we label as stress, right? And it's just a negative experience as we try and exert ourselves on a world that doesn't necessarily want us to exert ourselves that way. And then we find ways to fit in with people who have similar models and similar frames, where it's easier. And like you said, we can hang out with other people, but it's harder work. And again, that's stress, and that just feels like effort and energy that we have to expend for little additional value oftentimes. And interesting, you're talking about spouses and romantic partners and those kind of things, is we choose people who we can relax and we have an identity match. But you also mentioned there then that in a relationship we often have to let go or unpeel or concede aspects for identity, and that's what we experience as love, right? So we have a relationship with someone where we're able to retreat back. So what it sounds like, almost you're saying, and kind of come back to some of the other pieces there, is it's the lack of identity, the lack of ego. If we can get to that point, which you talked also about expectations, but there's a lack of ego, lack of belief of self, and clearing that away. If we can get to that point, then we can experience a stress-free existence, or an acceptance, a feeling of love with anybody that kind of we're in sync with. Is that what the kind of goal is from a experienced world without stress? Is just to peel away all of those levels of identity and just come to, I don't know, whatever our true authentic self is?
It's the process of consciousness evolution. That is the enlightenment path, which is exactly the same thing as consciousness evolution. People perceive enlightenment to be a destination because of the successes of the Buddha. But the reality is enlightenment is a path. It is the path to heal our false perceptions of self and become more and more our authentic self, which is very deep, is much deeper than we perceive it to be.
Oh, yeah. No, this is going a lot. I'm comfortable in the depths. I've got my water wings on, so I'm going to try and stay afloat.
Okay.
So let's jump into this. So one of your books talks a little bit about purpose. What's the purpose? What are we here for? Like, from
everyone's purpose is exactly the same. Our purpose is to explore ourselves. Our mission in life is to do what we like, which allows us to have the types of experiences that we need in order to fulfill our purpose. In other words, if you decided that you're going to be a physician, or you're going to be a baker, or a lawyer, or a plumber, or whatever the things in life, like work, that you choose to do, will provide you with the types of experiences that you need to explore yourself. We perceive that we have a lifetime that is a beginning and an ending, but you and I right now are an analog projection of our metaphysical self. We simultaneously exist in both the metaphysical world and the physical world. We undergo multiple incarnations in order to experience the physical world through a different lens. At this point, we've all been white males, we've been white females, we've been black males, we've been red females. We've done all of that. We've been rich, we've been poor, all of those things. The average human has incarnated in over 3,000 lifetimes, some as many as 8,000 lifetimes. Out of each lifetime, that is a lens that allows us to have a lens through which to interpret our experiences. The accumulated learning that we have from a lifetime is incorporated into our consciousness pattern, our metaphysical self, which is our enduring self. We exist within a range of consciousness, and it is a very elementary range of consciousness. Our task in this range of consciousness is to awaken, overcome unconsciousness, to become aware, and eventually to become awareness itself, which is, it's like learning the curriculum of third grade so you can go to fourth grade. You can't do fourth grade work until you learn the curriculum of third grade. So we are essentially in third grade, and we are learning the necessary lessons of third grade so that we will be able to do the lessons of fourth grade, learn the curriculum of fourth grade.
And so the curriculum of third grade is awakening, and it takes us 3,000 to 8,000 iterations to try and figure that out.
Well, the Earth experiences had a very slow progress.
Yep.
Earth is considered to be a second chance planet, which means that we have failed to graduate multiple times. We're kind of like a reform school.
Explains a lot about me. Yeah. So, okay. So given that we've had a few goes, and we're still experiencing stress, we're still resisting and fighting against something, whatever that is, and we've had experiences, some good, some bad. We've ended up in whatever spot we're in. What do we need to do? Like, what's the answer? And now I'm thinking third grade, right? What's the answer to the test so I can go to the fourth grade? I just want to know what the answer.
You got to do your homework.
I knew you were going to say that. So
yeah,
give me some homework then. What is my job, and to see if I can figure it out before this kind of
incarnation is over with.
yeah. I'm going to stretch this one out. I'm going to try and last as long as I can just to hold on to it. But what's my homework?
Your homework is the same as everyone's homework, to have experiences from the perspective of awareness. What is necessary to happen at this point of awakening is to become aware that what you've been doing isn't working, and learn to use the same awareness that you've been using all of these years to point outside of you, to measure your responses and reactions to the world around you. That same awareness needs to be inverted. It's directional. And as you learn to invert that awareness, then you begin to become aware of, probably first of all, your accumulated emotional baggage. In other words, emotional baggage is nothing more than the life lessons, the experiences that have been brought to you, which are homework assignments, but you didn't do your homework. You didn't learn the lesson that were brought to you at the time that you had the experience. And just like homework assignments, just because you didn't do it doesn't mean it's not due. It's still due.
Yeah.
But we get to keep this this lesson in the form of emotion. And this emotion has weight. It gets heavy. In other words, the more homework you didn't do, the more weight that you have. And so this becomes oppressive for many people, because we all have potentially the same amount of energy. But that one source of energy has to run your mind, your body, and spirit. The whole thing, your whole package has to run off this one energy source. And if your energy is being diverted in order to carry this emotional baggage, then just like a hair dryer that doesn't have enough energy in order to run properly, you won't run properly. But as you increase the flow of energy by reducing the load that you're carrying, the more energy you have to fuel the awareness. The energy fuels awareness just like gasoline fuels a car. So the more healing that you do of the emotional baggage, the more energy that you have to become more aware. The more aware that you become, the more easily you become aware of the beliefs that you've incorporated into this false identity that are perpetuating your stress and suffering. And suffering is nothing more than repeating stress. So stress is, if you think you've hit yourself in the head one time with a 2x4, and suffering is you continue to bop yourself in the head with a 2x4.
Yep. Take me through an example. So let's say, and I work a lot with salespeople, and a salesperson comes to me and says, "Dan, listen to the podcast. It was great. Dean dropped some knowledge bombs on us. But help me out. I'm not stressed about my internal environment and my ego. I've got a sales number to hit in 2 months, and I'm waking up at night having nightmares because somebody isn't getting back to me, and I'm stressed that I'm not going to be able to pay the bills and support my family and things along those lines." How do those two correlate? How do they correlate in your mind?
Salespeople are the infantry. They're on the front line and they're getting shot at daily, and they are obligated to shoot back with success. And so consequently, they, being the front line, are indicative of the entire mindset of business in general. The mindset of business in general is profitability. As long as you have that mindset of profitability, you are going to perpetuate your stress. If you change that mindset to being of service to the people that you're working with, how can this product truly help this person accomplish their goals? Then the pressure of profitability becomes secondary, but it becomes more easily achieved. Because if you're, and this is taught in numerous sales classes, if you solve the other person's problem, then they're going to be attached to you because you've made their life less stressful. But it's a mindset on a salesperson's part. If they have to change their mindset to be of service as opposed to making a sale.
And if we do that, then we're looking at things through a different lens. And like you say, the expectation shifts. The expectation is not on, I need to hit this number or make this money, but I'm here. And so there's that gap.
Yeah.
Question is, have I added value and been of service? Yes, I have. So I guess there's no gap. And then does that make us and I'm thinking again about incarnation Buddhism and stuff like that, like the concept of non-attachment. I have to be unattached to the outcome because I've done what I need to do for the best of the relationship. Is that where we're kind of taking that?
To a large degree, yes. I mean, if you're being of service to another person by reducing their stress, you're solving their problem, then they're much more likely to do business with you now and in the future. And so the relationship, rather than being transactional for this one sale, becomes a lasting relationship.
Yeah, you're right. It is a mindset. And this is, again, something that I try and work with whenever I'm working with salespeople is what is the problem you're solving? Like, articulate that. Can you understand it? Can you fully verbalize it and step into that? There's still the little headache of managers banging on the door for numbers and things like that. But the best salespeople are the ones with that focus, for sure.
Yeah, they are. But it's business in general. I mean, the manager has the same difficulty. And it's a good manager, regardless of what level of management, is not a micromanager. A good manager has trained his people well and feels comfortable with their capacity and gives them liberty in order to be successful. And there's significantly less stress on the manager because he can have, at that point, if he's exerted the effort to prepare his people well, then his stress is dramatically reduced.
Yeah, for sure. So here's something. So we talked about lowering expectations or closing the gap between expectations and experience. How do we balance ambition and goals and desire without adding too much stress? Because I would imagine adding, kind of putting goals out into the future is going to change your expectation. Like you said, there's a gap between expectation and reality. It's going to create stress. So how do we create that gap without creating a feeling of stress and suffering?
Well, what you have to you began with the necessary first step. What is your ambition? And we perceive our ambition. Well, I want to make a lot of money, or I want to be propelled up the corporate ladder, or whatever. But the only reason we do that is our true ambition is to be happier.
Okay.
Because I perceive if I was the regional manager of whatever, then I'd be happy because I'm making a lot of money and I have people working for me, and I perceive that I would be happy. But that in and of itself, and in the groups that I teach, I ask people what their ambition is, what they want. And invariably somebody will raise their hand and say, I want a lot of money. Okay, well, let's assume that you had all the money in the world, all of it, and you bought South Sea Island, beautiful South Sea Island. And you move to the South Sea Island and you take all the money in the world and it's piled up all the way to the clouds, and you and your money. Are you happy? Oh, well, no, I'm not happy because, with the money, people will love me. They'll be my posse, or they'll come and party with me, or whatever, whatever your expectation is. So what you're really seeking is love. And you think that money is going to get you love. So why don't you just cut through the bullshit and go for the love? You are the love. You are the love. So in order to experience that and enjoy the happiness that is your true ambition, you need to heal all these false perceptions of self and heal the emotional baggage and allow your authentic self to emerge. When you do that, then we are magnetic. We attract others that have done the same work. So if we're looking for a spousal relationship, we will attract those spouses that have done the same work and recognize our beingness, and we recognize their beingness. And contrary to most perceptions, that type of relationship becomes logarithmic. So it's not 1 + 1 = 2. It's 1 logarithm 1 10. And so your feelings of happiness, completion, and love are exponential in relationship to just a 1 + 1 relationship.
I'm having flashbacks to maths lectures and stuff.
Yeah, I promise. I usually refuse to do math in public, but I slipped up.
It's good. No, it's good. It's just exponential curves. Just think exponential curves. It grows very fast. No, I think so. Effectively, what you're saying then is let's say I want to get promoted. The goal is not to get promoted. The goal is to do the work until you're satisfied and accept where you are, and know that that is the next part of the journey and the evolution, but creating that internal environment that allows that to manifest. I don't want to use the manifest in a fluffy way, but it's effectively that: attract the relationships or connect with the people that can facilitate that next step on the run.
Well, the people recognize the changes in you. You don't have to raise a flag and start waving it. They recognize your capabilities because you have changed yourself, and you have demonstrated by virtue of your behavior, your suitability for those higher positions. And of course, we always run the danger of the Peter principle, that we're promoted to our level of incompetency, which is necessary for the individual to become aware of that. Is that I want this position, but if I do, then I'll have no time for family. I won't have any time for the things that I enjoy. So is it worth it?
Yeah.
Should I stay at this level and enjoy life and experience greater happiness in lieu of taking this more advanced position?
One thing you mentioned, though, is we have to maximize our experience. Well, not maximize, but we talked about experience life and live as much as we can. How do we balance those two with the acceptance, but also the living the experience? How do we know where that fine line is? Because it feels
By trial and error.
Yeah.
By trial and error. But we have to, in order to make a competent decision about that, we have to decide to assume responsibility for ourselves. And in doing that is the necessity of measuring all of the factors of our life to determine how it's going to affect my happiness. Because happiness is the goal. I mean, that's the measure of how we're doing.
Yeah, I think for me, and I've had this conversation a few times lately, happiness is the byproduct. I think that's the end result of living. And you mentioned this, having experiences that are in line with the experience you want to have. So choosing a journey or a vehicle that you want to have, and constantly being on that without the expectation. And then there's a feeling of, I think it's satisfaction or life well lived or something along those lines. Some people call it happiness, but it's this feeling of, yeah, I'm in the place that I'm supposed to be. Let's do some homework then. So let's say I'm not as perfect as I am. Just imagine that. You know, I've had however many iterations. Pretend this is my first, and I'm like, yeah, I'm perfect. Let's go. What do I need to heal? What are some of the biggest things that you see people needing to heal, and how do people go about it?
In my counseling practice, my counseling work, I have a unique practice. I don't sit with someone for a long period of time. I don't want a long relationship. They lay on the couch every week and we sit and talk about their story. Therapists refer their clientele to me in order to jumpstart their healing. Invariably, we have this emotional baggage that we were talking about before. And this emotional baggage is usually subconscious. And it usually is the ever-ready battery that keeps fueling our anxiety. The one, I try to get to the person's condition that they want to heal, their basic ongoing condition that they want to heal, that they feel constantly reoccurs, and 95% of the time, if not more, that underlying condition is a subconscious or maybe conscious belief that they are not good enough, that they're not worthy. That needs to be healed. And that usually goes back to an early childhood experience that they had. I had one woman that she was an attorney, had a very successful firm, but she clenched up every time she asked the client for money. And she was a great attorney, but she just, she did it, but she just clenched up when she asked them for money. And we did some processing, and it went back to a time that she didn't even remember in conscious conversation. So it's not going to come out in a therapy session, where she was the younger of two girls, two sisters, and her older sister and her friend would play, and the older sister would be obligated to take care of the younger one. That was just older sister duties. But the older one and her friend would constantly take the doll that the younger one was so attached to while they were together. And so this created a mindset for the younger one that she wasn't good enough to play with her older sister and friend. And that was a foundational belief that she incorporated into this identity that persisted. And the woman was in her late 40s. And when we discovered that by following the emotion, not by following the story, we were able to clear it, and the whole condition was gone. She was healed. She had a lot more things in life to heal, but that underlying condition gave rise to that I'm not worthy. I'm not good enough in order to get people to pay me for the good work that I do. And 95% of the time, regardless of what the successes or failures or whatever that a person has, they have that underlying belief that will go back to some early life experience that created that mindset.
It's fascinating, isn't it? That, and I talk about this a lot, but I have a 4.5-year-old daughter, and I'm constantly being given a mirror of all of these things and trying to remember all of these lessons that I learn with my guests and have learned across life. Is not to make those mistakes, is to allow her to experience the world and make her own judgments, but also keep her safe. But it's funny, isn't it? Yeah, like we go back to these moments that seemingly, like if we look at them now, we're inconsequential, but at the time created such an impact on our identity that we persisted them throughout many, many years. One of the challenges, or one of the things that I really want to help people with, and I kind of try and encourage us as much as possible, is talking about this openly. There's obviously a stigma associated with talking about mental health, talking about, especially in business, feelings of not good enough or not worthy. We give it fancy titles like imposter syndrome, but imposter syndrome, one of my guests was talking about, it's just a lack of self-worth. It's this feeling that a step up is going to challenge my self-worth and I'm going to get caught out and not feel worthy in the surroundings that I'm in. How can we make talking about this, and I'll use the word fluffy because I've been in this space and it can be fluffy, but you're making it very practical and highly applicable. How can we encourage, or how can we support people to raise this as a conversation if they're feeling stress, if they're feeling anxiety, and they want to start making moves, but they don't necessarily want to go to a therapist?
Therapy doesn't always help, and I don't always recommend to people to go to therapy. The success of therapy is contingent upon the eruditeness of the therapist, and there are very few, in my experience, that have the necessary awareness in order to be truly helpful to people. The therapists work with the story. And the story is, you remember when you used to go to the library and you would go to the card catalog and you'd look up the card catalog and it would point you to the book, but you had to go to the book to find out what you wanted to know that you were searching for. The story is the card catalog. That's all it is. And until you go to the emotion that was used to interpret the experience, you're never going to get to what you need to get to in order to heal. You can go directly to the emotion and bypass the story completely, and that's what I do. And we were talking before we began. I have a book called The Identity Model, Understanding and Healing Stress and Suffering. It's a short book. I wrote it for the mental health profession, but there's no background in mental health required whatsoever. It's an easy to read book, and I wrote it that way on purpose. And I have three, in addition to explaining the identity that we create and how it manifests into different conditions, everything from jealousy to depression and so forth. It has 3 exercises in the back, 2 of which you can do yourself completely on your own, which I use in my practice. And the third one, you need somebody to work with, but there's a script that all one person has to do is follow the script. And that's the process that I use to get to the condition that people have. And so if you have somebody that you can work with, a spouse or friend or whoever, you can just reciprocate with each other by following the script, and you will have remarkable results. It's the process, it's not me. And the 2 other processes that you can do on yourself, I use one of them. I do a lot of work with veterans that have PTSD, and it is dramatically effective on healing traumas. And we all have traumas. We just may not recognize them. And traumas go away. I worked with a veteran that was a Vietnam veteran. He had significant PTSD and was 100% disabled since Vietnam. And I did the process with him, and in 10 minutes time, it was gone. It healed that quickly. And so it is immediate results, but you just have to do the work. And I tell people you need to do whichever process you choose, you need to do it an hour a day. It works very quickly. You can do 15 minutes in the morning, 15 minutes at night, and 30 minutes on your lunch break, or, you know, however your schedule will permit. But healing this emotional baggage will be a dramatic game changer for your awareness, which will allow you to begin to put the pieces of the puzzle together. You know your story, so you can put the pieces of the puzzle together if you can get rid of the emotional baggage.
Mm-hmm. And what was the name of that book? I'll make sure it gets linked in there.
Okay. The Identity Model, Understanding and Healing Stress and Suffering.
How did you learn all this? Like, this is, you know, like you say, it's oftentimes a therapist is the therapy client relationship that creates change, but you're talking about a process that, you know, that people can replicate for themselves. How did you discover this model or this framework that seems to be so effective?
Well, the information on the identity and all the other the things, the fluff things, I guess you were able to refer to it. I have through meditation been able to communicate with my higher self. And I went through a period of about 10 years where I had the luxury of near isolation. That I was the student, and I was taught this. The practices, the three methodologies were created by a Serbian psychologist that was focused on enlightenment as opposed to simply just studying behavior. And they've proven dramatically successful. My spouse, and how I became in contact with this guy, my spouse suffered from extreme headaches. They're called suicide headaches, and she had them all her life, but they are cyclical, and that they would come. They last about 30 days, but it would come once a year, every 2 years, and she learned to manage it. She was able to have a very successful professional career until they went chronic. In other words, she had them all the time. And so there were no pain medications that affected it. And she was having to take massive doses of steroids, which was the only thing that quelled the intensity of the pain. And there are two clinics in the country, one in Houston and one in Chicago, that specialize in this type of headache. And they had the same solution. They wanted to sever her trigeminal nerve so that the pain wouldn't be felt. And so that's essentially an artificial stroke. So we didn't want to do that. We thought that was a little out of the question.
Yeah.
So a friend of mine suggested, alternative techniques. And through following these techniques, we found this Serbian psychologist. We were trained in these techniques, and they were dramatically effective. Her headaches went away, and she no longer had the headaches. And so we thought, maybe we need to learn how to do this. And so we did. And we were trained in it by the creator of the processes. And these processes that I've put into the books are those processes. They cure emotional, they cure physical, they cure all sorts of ills that we have. Because the physical is just a manifestation of the mind.
Yeah.
So how we tell the body to be is how it is.
And there's a huge combination, like the mind-body connection is just insane. And not just in stress, but showing up mentally and physically in so many areas, like the way our body learns and our mind learns. There's so many similarities between the two. And just so you know, I use the word fluffy with a very affectionate term. I've yeah, I've been fortunate enough to study psychology and kind of the textbook and the research side, and I've done a master's degree. But I've also spent a little bit of time in the other side of the equation, which is not so textbook heavy. So, and yeah, I think there are answers on both sides. There are definitely ways that, and actually both just use different language to describe the same things oftentimes. Yeah.
A lot of time, and I've done a lot of psychology study as well. The one thing that's always been most aggravating to me is psychology studies behavior in an attempt to understand the mind, and no one has an idea of what a mind is.
Yep.
A mind is nothing more than a bundle of beliefs. That's all a mind is.
Yeah.
And that is the lens that we create in order to interpret our experiences, and that manifests into our body. So when we change those beliefs, we change how the body functions.
Dean, this has been a fascinating review of existence, of purpose, of feeling of separation from self, and how that shows up in the physical world from a stress and anxiety perspective. Let's leave the listeners with some practical steps. Where can they, if you would say 3 things they should start immediately doing or thinking or acting or behaving, what would be those 3 things that you can help them better deal with stress or close that gap?
The most immediate thing that everyone needs to do is decide that they're going to assume responsibility for their healing from stress and suffering. Without that, there's no point in trying anything else. If you're going to subjugate yourself to someone else's whims or ideologies, then all you're doing is perpetuating your stress and suffering. And so once you do that, then you need to learn to invert that awareness that we were talking about from outside of yourself to inside of yourself. Once you do that with diligence, and this is best done through meditation, once you do that with diligence, then you begin to see, you turn the light on inside of yourself and you recognize, well, there's the problem, and you're going to let it go. You're not going to say, gee, that's a terrible thought, that's a terrible belief, but I'll just keep it there. It's more trouble to carry it over to the trash can than it is to leave it there.
Yeah.
And then focus on healing that emotional baggage. I'm sure therapists use EMDR, which can be effective. It's not as effective as the processes that I put in the back of the book, but it can be effective. But it's necessary to liberate more energy so that you can escalate your awareness and propel your healing further down the road.
Brilliant. I'm going to link the book, the Identity Model book, in the show notes. So if you want to find a way to let go of some of your stories or the energy around those stories, then definitely get a copy of Dean's book. Yeah, Dean, I've taken stuff from this. I take something from every episode, but I think the big one is the importance of meditation. I used to meditate. It's been a minute. It's been a long minute. And so I think I'm going to literally immediately after this go and spend just a moment just reconnecting and turning the attention inward.
Good. People, I tell just briefly, I'll say, people come to meditation running away from the stick because the stick hurts. And so they're motivated to get out from under the stick, and they will have a moment where they get a bite of the apple. So their motivation transforms to running away from the stick to getting more of what they really like. And that's when they really start the healing process significantly.
I remember there was a few sticks in the meditation as well. But
the sticks are what you bring with it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's what you uncover, and then that's what you have to deal with. That's the homework, right? That's
what's causing you the problem. Exactly. That's the problem.
All right, I'm going to go and face the problem for a minute.
Okay.
Dean, thank you so much. This was a fascinating review and some great advice. And listeners, hopefully you've taken a lot from this as well, and can highly recommend going and grab a copy of Dean's book. Dean, thanks very much, and hopefully we'll speak again And
I hope so. I've enjoyed this very much. I appreciate your having me on as a guest.
It's been a pleasure.